In a world that never stops moving, modern human beings seem to be increasingly losing their inner peace. We live amid countless forms of noise, the noise of work, of social expectations, of social media, of worries that have not yet arrived but already disturb the mind. Although material conditions are increasingly abundant and technology ever more advanced, deep within, many people still carry a vague sense of emptiness, an unnamed exhaustion, and a quiet longing to live in peace. People search for peace in many places. Some seek it in success, some in relationships, others in controlling everything perfectly. Yet paradoxically, the more we grasp, the more we fear loss. The more we strive to achieve, the more restless the mind becomes. Peace always seems to lie somewhere ahead, like something to be attained in the future, after everything has finally become settled. And so, we continue living in waiting, in tension, in unease, without realizing that the very way we are living is what makes peace feel so distant. Buddhism, thousands of years ago, looked directly at this reality. It neither avoided it nor idealized it, nor did it promise a paradise outside of ourselves. Buddhism begins with a simple yet profound truth: human life inherently contains suffering. What is remarkable, however, is that Buddhism does not stop at identifying suffering, it also clearly points out the path that leads to its cessation. And at the heart of that path lies inner peace, not a fragile peace dependent on circumstances, but a steady calm that arises from within. The secret of peace, according to Buddhism, does not lie in changing the external world, but in understanding and transforming the inner world. When the mind is no longer pulled by craving, no longer burned by anger, no longer clouded by ignorance, then even amid changing circumstances, a person can remain grounded. Peace, in this sense, is not an escape from reality, but the ability to be fully present with reality without being swept away by it. What makes Buddhist teachings distinctive is their practicality and directness. Buddhism does not ask people to believe blindly, nor does it force acceptance based on tradition. Instead, it invites individuals to observe themselves, to observe the mind, emotions, and reactions to life's changes. Through such observation, one gradually realizes that most suffering does not come from events themselves, but from how the mind clings to those events. We suffer because we want everything to go our way. We feel uneasy because we fear losing what we currently have. We worry because we live either in the past or the future, rarely truly living in the present moment. Buddhism calls this ignorance, not a lack of knowledge, but a failure to see the true nature of life. When we do not see impermanence clearly, we fear change. When we do not see non-self clearly, we struggle to protect the I. When we do not see suffering clearly, we keep chasing things that cannot bring lasting happiness. The secret of inner peace, therefore, is not a complex formula, but mindfulness. It is the ability to return to the breath, to the body and mind, to the present moment. It is learning to let go of what cannot be controlled, rather than resisting it. It is understanding that emotions come and go, thoughts arise and cease, and nothing in the mind is permanent. When this realization is gained not merely through intellect, but through direct experience, a space of stillness begins to open within. Within that space, one no longer needs to run away from oneself. There is no longer a need to prove one's worth through achievements or external recognition. One is no longer swept up in comparison, competition, or rivalry. Peace, at this point, is not a fleeting sense of excitement or temporary pleasure, but a deep, steady state in which the mind is no longer shaken by the changes of life. The theme, the Buddhist secret to inner peace, is not meant to offer a distant theory, but an invitation to return. A return to oneself, to what is unfolding within the mind. On this journey, we will explore how Buddhism understands suffering, the roots of inner unrest, and the path of practice that leads to genuine tranquility, not through blind faith, but through understanding, contemplation, and lived experience. For peace is not something to be found far away. It has never left you. It is simply that, in the rush of modern life, we have forgotten how to listen to ourselves. And Buddhism, in its simplicity and depth, is the map that helps us remember the way back, the path that leads to the peace that has always existed within every human being. When delving more deeply into the secret of inner peace according to Buddhism, the first thing that must be faced directly is this. Peace does not arise when life becomes perfect, but when we stop demanding that life be perfect. This truth runs counter to most of the beliefs modern human beings carry with them. We are taught that happiness will come when everything is stable, when problems are solved, when worries disappear. Yet Buddhism points out that this very waiting is the source of unease. In the Buddhist view, the human mind is like the surface of water. When strong winds blow, the water ripples and the reflected image becomes distorted. People often try to change the external world to make the surface of the water calm, forgetting that the true wind lies within the mind itself. Craving, fear, expectation, and attachment are the winds that continuously stir the inner world. As long as these winds remain, no matter how favorable the circumstances may be, the mind cannot be at peace. One of the deepest roots of inner unrest is attachment to the self. Human beings do not suffer only because of loss, but also because of the fear of losing their self-image. We fear being looked down upon, fear failure, fear not being recognized. All of these fears revolve around protecting a self that we believe to be fixed and important. Buddhism calls this self-clinging. When the mind constantly places the self at the center, every situation becomes a potential threat, and peace becomes fragile. Buddhism does not deny the existence of human individuality, but it points out that what we call I is in fact a continuous flow of body, feelings, mind, and perception. There is no unchanging entity to protect. When this is clearly seen, the burden begins to lighten. We no longer need to strain ourselves to maintain an image, nor do we overreact to praise or blame. Peace arises not because the world becomes more pleasant, but because we no longer place such heavy importance on proving who we are. Another key element in the secret of inner peace is acceptance of impermanence. Much of human suffering comes from resisting change. We want joy to last, want sorrow to disappear quickly, want good things never to end. But the nature of life is constant change. When impermanence is not accepted, the mind lives in anxiety even in moments of happiness, because deep down, we know that everything will eventually change. Buddhism teaches that when impermanence is truly seen, the mind does not become pessimistic, but more awake and appreciative. We learn to live fully in the present moment, without clinging and without pushing away. When joy arises, we feel grateful. When sorrow arises, we observe it. No emotion is treated as an enemy. When we no longer fight against our experience, the mind gradually settles. Inner peace is also inseparable from how we face suffering. Buddhism does not encourage avoidance of suffering, nor does it view suffering as something wrong. On the contrary, suffering is seen as a silent teacher. When suffering is observed with mindfulness, we begin to understand how the mind operates. We see that suffering does not exist independently, but arises from attachment and reaction. When pain appears, the habitual reaction of human beings is to escape, to seek distraction, temporary pleasure, or someone to blame. Buddhism, however, invites us to do the opposite. To stay with the sensation, without judgment, without identification. Simply to be aware. This very awareness creates a healthy distance between ourselves and suffering. Within that space, peace begins to arise. Another important pillar of inner peace is a life of mindfulness. Mindfulness is not a special state reserved only for meditation, but the ability to be present in each moment of daily life. When eating, we know we are eating. When walking, we know we are walking. When the mind is restless, we know the mind is restless. This awareness helps us avoid being swept away by thoughts and emotions. Most of the time, human beings live on autopilot. We react to words, act out of habit, think by inertia. It is precisely this unconscious living that exhausts the mind. With mindfulness, we begin to have choice. We can pause before speaking, before acting, before letting emotions take control. Each such pause adds a little more peace to the mind. Buddhism also emphasizes that peace cannot be separated from an ethical and compassionate way of life. A mind that lives in deception, harm, and selfishness can hardly be truly at ease. When we act against our conscience, even if no one else knows, the mind knows. A quiet unrest accumulates. Conversely, when we live truthfully, kindly, and with consideration for others, the mind naturally becomes lighter. Compassion is not only for others, but also for oneself. Many people live in harshness toward themselves, constantly self-blaming, comparing, and forcing themselves. Buddhism reminds us that if we do not know how to care for ourselves wisely, it is difficult to care for others. When we learn to view ourselves with understanding and kindness, inner tensions gradually loosen. Inner peace, therefore, is not the result of a sudden moment of awakening, but a gradual process of transformation. Bit by bit, we learn to let go, to see more deeply, to slow down. At times the mind is peaceful. At times it is unsettled. But unlike before, we are no longer frightened when unrest appears. We know it is merely a state arising and passing away. It is this understanding that gives human beings a solid foundation. Peace is no longer a condition dependent on the world, but becomes an inner quality. Even as life remains full of change, even when difficulties cannot be avoided, deep within there is a quiet place to which we can always return. As mindfulness gradually becomes part of daily life, human beings begin to realize that inner peace is not a rigid, static state, but a gentle flexibility of the mind. Peace does not mean the absence of thoughts or emotions, but the capacity to allow everything to arise and pass away without leaving deep wounds. The mind at this point is like a vast sky, where clouds may come and go, yet the sky itself is not harmed by the shapes of the clouds. One common misunderstanding about peace is the belief that it means withdrawing from life, avoiding responsibility or emotion. But Buddhism does not teach people to turn their backs on the world, it teaches how to live in the world without being dominated by it. When the mind is sufficiently grounded, one can still face pressure, loss, and challenges, without being drowned by them. The difference lies not in the circumstances, but in how the mind relates to circumstances. When this is deeply understood, we begin to see clearly that much of life's exhaustion does not come from work or obligations, but from inner resistance. We are tired because we want everything to be different, because we do not accept what is. We are drained because we are constantly struggling against reality. Buddhism calls this unconscious resistance. When this resistance is released, even if circumstances have not changed, the energy of the mind has changed. Another subtle aspect of inner peace is freedom from thoughts. Human beings often believe that they are what they think. When a negative thought appears, we immediately identify with it. I am a failure, my life has no meaning. But according to Buddhism, thoughts are merely phenomena that arise and pass within the mind, they are not absolute truths. When this nature is seen, we are no longer blindly controlled by our thoughts. This freedom does not come from eliminating thoughts, but from seeing thoughts as thoughts. When a worrying idea arises, we recognize it instead of following it. When a painful memory surfaces, we observe it instead of sinking into it. This very capacity to observe without identification creates a deep inner stillness. Within that stillness, peace does not need to be created, it naturally reveals itself. Buddhism also emphasizes that inner peace cannot be separated from a deep understanding of human suffering. When we seek peace only for ourselves, without opening our hearts to the suffering of others, that sense of calm becomes fragile and self-centered. But when we understand that all beings are struggling with unease, fear, and wounds, a natural softness arises within the mind. This softness is the foundation of compassion. Compassion is not a surface emotion, but a deep understanding that all harmful actions arise from ignorance and suffering. When we view life through this lens, we judge less, become less angry, and less extreme. The mind becomes lighter and more spacious. And this very openness is a profoundly deep form of peace. Inner peace, according to Buddhism, is also closely related to how we use time and life energy. When the mind constantly runs toward the past and the future, the present becomes impoverished and empty. We live, but do not truly live. Buddhism invites us to return to very simple things: a breath, a step, a moment of stillness. Within this simplicity, the mind has a chance to rest. Many people search for peace by changing external circumstances, while neglecting to nurture their inner life. Buddhism points out that if the mind is not cared for, no matter how many comforts one has, a sense of lack remains. Conversely, when the mind is nourished by mindfulness, understanding, and compassion, even in simple conditions, a sense of sufficiency can be felt. Another important element is patience with oneself on the path of transformation. Inner peace does not arrive instantly. There are days when the mind is calm, and days when it is full of turbulence. Buddhism does not regard such turbulence as failure, but as a natural part of the process. Each time we recognize that we are unsettled is already a step forward. Each time we return to the breath is already a return. It is precisely this unhurried, non-coercive attitude that makes the path gentle. When we no longer set the goal of achieving peace, we paradoxically come closer to it. Because peace is not an accomplishment, but the natural result of letting go and understanding. Gradually, people begin to realize that what they have long been searching for does not lie in the future, nor in any special state. Peace is not a reward after overcoming all difficulties, but the way we are present with difficulty. When the mind no longer resists, no longer identifies, no longer clings, then even amid the imperfections of life, a deep stillness can be felt. And it is here that the door leading toward the conclusion slowly opens. For when we clearly see that peace is not something to be sought, but something to be recognized, the entire journey of living begins to shift direction. From chasing outwardly, we turn inward. From demanding that life must change, we learn to change the way we see life. And from that shift, an unconditional peace gradually reveals itself, quiet, unassuming, yet steady and deeply enduring, after passing through the various deep layers of Buddhist teachings. What remains is not a complex philosophical system, but a very simple truth: inner peace does not lie in changing the world, but in transforming the way we live with that world. All outward searching, if it lacks a return inward, can only bring temporary calm. Only when the mind is looked at, clearly understood, and gently released does peace truly find a place to settle. Buddhism does not promise that life will become easier. There will still be loss, dissatisfaction, separation, and upheaval. But what Buddhism points out is this: we do not have to suffer in the old way anymore. When we clearly understand the impermanent nature of all things, we no longer cling as before. When we see clearly how the mind operates, we are no longer swept away by emotions and thoughts. And when we no longer identify ourselves with what is constantly arising and passing away, a deep and natural peace quietly appears. That peace is not loud. It is not a feeling of excitement or exhilaration. It is like an underground stream flowing silently beneath the movements of life. Outside, there may still be storms, but inside, there is already a firm point of refuge. This is the secret Buddhism seeks to transmit, a sense of stability that does not depend on circumstances, but is grounded in mindfulness and understanding. When we no longer chase the elimination of suffering at all costs, we begin to learn how to listen to it. When we no longer regard unease as an enemy, we begin to see it as a signal that needs to be understood. This very attitude transforms our entire relationship with life. We no longer live in constant fear, but in honest contact with each moment. Buddhism also reminds us that peace cannot be separated from the way we treat others and ourselves. A mind that constantly judges, blames, and is harsh cannot truly be at ease. Conversely, when we cultivate understanding, compassion, and mindfulness, the mind gradually becomes softer. Within that softness, the sharp edges of suffering are worn down. Importantly, this path does not require us to become a different person, but simply invites us to return to our true self, before being swept away by labels, expectations, and comparisons. When we no longer try to prove our worth, we begin to feel the inherent value of presence itself. When we no longer race to be happy, we realize that happiness and peace have never left us. Inner peace, therefore, is not the destination of a long journey, but the way we walk that journey. Each mindful breath, each moment of letting go, each return to oneself is an expression of peace. There is no need to wait for a perfect day, no need to wait until all problems are resolved. Even within the incompleteness of life, peace can still arise. When this is understood, we no longer live with a sense of lack. We no longer believe that something more is needed in order to be at peace. Instead, we learn to appreciate what is already present and to accept what is. This acceptance is not resignation, but the foundation of wisdom. From this foundation, necessary changes can unfold naturally and without force. Buddhism does not require us to believe in anything metaphysical in order to attain peace. Everything begins with the direct observation of inner life. When we have the courage to look directly at our own unease, we have already taken the first steps on the path of transformation. And each small step, when nourished by patience and understanding, leads to an ever-deepening sense of stability. If there is one final thing to remember, it is this: peace is not a reward reserved for a few, but a capacity available within every human being. It is simply that, amid the hurried pace of life, we have forgotten how to connect with it. Buddhism offers nothing new, but helps us remember what has always been there. If the reflections in this video touch something within you, take a moment to pause and ask yourself, what in my life is causing my mind to be unsettled? And could I begin with one very small step, a slower breath, a gentler letting go, a kinder way of looking at myself? You are welcome to share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. That sharing is not merely expression, but also a way of nurturing mindfulness. And if you feel that content like this supports your inner journey, consider subscribing to the channel so we can continue exploring the depths of Buddhism together, not to seek something outside, but to return to the peace that has always been present within you.